Matthew, thank you for joining me on the Spirit Farm podcast.
Mate, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm ecstatic to be on. Thanks for having me.
And your accent is outstanding. I love it. Where is this accent coming from?
Well, it's actually coming from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, though. I'm sure you won't let me get away with that. No, I'm from Melbourne, Australia originally.
Melbourne, Australia. And then, so were you born in Melbourne?
I was born and raised. So we spent a couple of years in Sydney and I worked in Adelaide for a little bit. And then when I turned 30, I made the decision to move to the US. So I actually moved to Austin, Texas. We spent a few years there and I loved Austin. It's a wonderful city, especially for starting a business. And then, we're going to talk about my introversion, right?
Yes.
Austin's is a very small, big city. So, I love Chapel Hill. Here I can, really roam where no one knows my name. And, there's lovely country areas to go for runs in. And it's beautiful. The nature here is just amazing.
Yeah, I've heard that. You know what? North Carolina is like a very popular place. And I was just reading something about how there's like a couple of different cities in North Carolina that are in the top 10 of places to live in the country. Colorado was dominating the list, and then North Carolina was right there. But what inspired you? Let's back up a quick second. What inspired you to move from Australia to Austin, Texas? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, my backstory is I kind of built 5 multi-million-dollar businesses from the ground up, but everything I knew was kind of bricks and mortar, direct sales, telemarketing, that sort of thing. So
okay, so you did that in your 20s in Australia.
That's correct. Yeah,
5 companies.
Yeah, so I didn't when we were talking offline about kind of work-life balance.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a lot of that when I was younger. My wife is kind of the one. My wife is my boss, and she'll make sure that I balance my life now. But I literally got to 30, and I kind of realized that there were a couple of things really. I wanted to travel. I kind of had my gap year at 30, okay. And I wanted to travel a little bit, but also I realized that, because everything I knew was kind of face-to-face kind of sales and, retail stores, I kind of realized that if I wanted to grow beyond the size of business that I was growing, I really wanted to try my hand at a bigger economy. So I went traveling to look at it. So I spent 3 months in South America and realized this thing called English speaking is pretty important to me. So I just went, you know what? It's a great and thriving economy, but not going to work. I had a wonderful time there, amazing cultures, some of the South American countries. But when I came to the US, it felt so natural. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for why, a lot of the behavioralisms are different in the US compared to the Australia. But I fell in love with, especially Austin. I fell in love with Austin. And then, every good story's got a girl in it, right? I met my now wife. And I just went, this is, it's a great city. I fell in love with South by Southwest in Austin and went, I love this. I want to come back and see what it's like when that's not on. And then I loved it more without South by going on, and just went, okay, this is the city for me. So, it was a lot of different things at the time, but, I just realized, it's funny, when I got there, I actually realized that I needed to create an online business. Otherwise, if my family ever got sick, I could never go home. Right. So I could have done everything I was going to do from Australia, but, I fell in love with the city. I think it's an amazing town. The people were great, and it just felt like home for me. And, it was only a couple of years, 4 years later, when my wife and I decided we wanted a little bit of a slightly less of a fast-paced lifestyle, where we moved to North Carolina, and I mean, we love it here as well.
So South by Southwest, for people that don't know, is a big conference that happens in Austin, right? In some ways, it kind of put Austin on the map.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of, I think that you explained it in a great way. A lot of people that are local would call it, a 3-week party, where, there's lots of bands playing. And that was the thing that I think, as an Australian perspective, I've been to a lot of conferences, but, they have a kind of future tech conference element to it. And that week, it's amazing. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's a huge conference, but you can get a lot of those things in like Las Vegas and things like that. I mean, when I got there, it was experiencing what Austin's called the live music capital of the world. I mean, you go past a pizza shop and there was a band playing. It was just unbelievable. And I just never experienced something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to have the population the United States has to pull so much talent from so many places.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously there's global talent there, but I was blown away by, I mean, it's really, Austin's not a big city, but to pull something like that off was just really impressive. And the way the city's structured, it was so easy to get around and enjoy every element of it.
Yeah, I've never been to South by Southwest. I've never been to Austin, but I need to make that happen. It's become a very popular destination, like North Carolina, as people are kind of fleeing the big cities, especially now from Southern California, and people are going to where I live in Arizona, or they're going to Colorado, or they're going to Austin, Texas, or different parts of Texas. I can see the appeal. I've got to visit. So you got to Austin and you started an online business. Let's jump into that in a moment. But your first 5, we can't just gloss over that too quickly. 5 companies in your 20s, multi-million-dollar companies. Were you groomed to be an entrepreneur? Did your parents give you the bug when you were a kid and you were doing lemonade stands when you were 7? And like, what did it look like? How did you get to that path of just crushing it as an entrepreneur and starting businesses at such a young age?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really important point to make for the audience, because it's a lot of times I'll speak from stage and you get about 2/3 into your presentation and you can see everyone looking at you thinking that exact same thing. Oh, you must have been groomed. You must have had that natural gift of gab. You must be able to just go out there and just make it happen. The problem is, and I think, especially introverts, we project extroversion on people that we see as successful. So because of that, we go, oh, it's easy for you, but not for us. But even a lot of extroverts in the audience are doing the same thing. Oh, yeah, you must have just had the silver spoon and you must have been groomed for it. Yeah, but the problem is, a lot of times we look at people that are successful and we see them as they are today, but not where they came from.
Sure.
For me, I had a reading speed of a 6th grader in late high school. I was horribly introverted. I had terrible acne. On my stage presentations, at about that stage, I put up this photo of me at my sister's wedding. And, I literally say to people, I'm only going to put this up for 2 seconds. And I do. It's 2 seconds and I click it off. But it's this photo of me at my sister's wedding. I've just got terrible acne, braces. But that was me back then. And luckily enough, I got diagnosed with this thing called Erlen Syndrome, which basically means I actually put on these pair of funny colored lenses. And I can miraculously learn to read. And, I couldn't learn to read like everyone else, but I could start the process of reading.
So they're funny colored lenses? So they're a lens that makes your eyes do something different?
Is, so if you think about the color white, which is what most paper is printed on, white is a spectrum of colors. And for me, my eye has a real interesting sensitivity to the color yellow. So I've got a pair of colored lenses. People will also do it with a piece of Perspex. And, when I went back to do my MBA, they actually printed out my entire student manual in a blue colored paper to filter out the yellow out of it. And a lot of people don't know they have it. Like, I was misdiagnosed as having dyslexia, and people would just say, oh, he just doesn't try enough. He just doesn't try enough. I was trying so hard, but nobody could tell because they can only see, how I performed on tests and things like that. And was I improving? So my parents really lobbied for me. And one thing I will say is, while, I wasn't groomed to be a successful small business owner, what I did have was very supportive parents that wouldn't take no for an answer. And my mum specifically, I think, read everything on the planet about literacy issues. And she discovered this thing called Erlen Syndrome, or is also known, and I don't know why they make these names so hard for people that can't spell. Right, but it's called scotomic sensitivity syndrome. I mean, who's going to spell that?
It's definitely not sensitive, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that. So it was just we call it Erlen because it's a simpler thing to spell.
Right.
But what happened was I hustled through the 2 years of high school, and I actually improved really quickly. I got into the top 20% of my state, but it took everything I had. I mean, I was exhausted, and I think my parents could tell that I had no idea what I wanted to do. And if I didn't know, I just wasn't going to be able to hustle like that for another 5 years, in something. And I probably would be studying the wrong thing anyway. So we all agreed I was going to take, that gap year, the year to try and find myself. And, but I came from a relative, not poor by a lot of global standards, but not well off by Australian standards, definitely.
Yeah.
And for me, I watched my dad break his back 80 hours a week in a job to support the family. There was no way I was going to be the guy sitting, watching TV, watching Oprah, if you like, and I definitely wasn't going to be affording flying to Europe and enjoying myself there. So we all agreed I was going to get a job, and the job I got was in real estate. And I wasn't the guy up the front selling by any means. I was the guy in the back office doing data entry with the look on my face, like, don't speak to me. I'm here to find myself, right?
I'm here to find myself.
Well, no, that was the thing. I mean, I was just really unsure of myself. So this seemed like a great job. And it was, for a period of time, it was looking like it was going to be great until week 3, my manager came in and he said, Matt, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but we've actually just been told by head office they're closing down this office. You're out of a job. Like, I've been there 3 weeks and here I am, no experience. I'm now out of work just before Christmas. And we were talking about Australia, like everything, just for the people that are listening that don't know Australia that well, everything's backwards, right? The toilet spins the wrong way. The seasons are different. Like, it's summer at Christmas time.
It's summer at Christmas. That's confusing.
My wife always thinks that is the most backwards thing in the world, because we used to watch the TV shows that had the snow and things like that. And it's just, that wasn't what we experienced. For us, it's, 100 degrees at Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
But the thing was that when that happened, like, we go on holidays because it's Christmas and summer at the same time. Everyone goes on holidays on the 20th of December and doesn't come back till the 15th or 20th of January. So if you can imagine running your own business around that time, you're about to pay everyone 4 weeks leave. Like, who are you hiring? You're not going to hire anyone. So the only jobs I could find in the paper at the time were these things called commission-only sales roles.
Yeah.
Now, if you can imagine a person kind of scared to talk to anyone, looking down the barrel of, a whole bunch of commission-only sales jobs, it wasn't okay, but they were the only jobs that I could find. So I applied for all 3. And I was actually really excited by the fact I got 3 interviews and then I got 3 jobs. Well, I got the job that I did take was business to business telecommunications. Day one, me going in all proud that I got selected to get this job. Well, they made it very clear that their focus is they just throw mud up against the wall and they see what sticks, which is fun saying until you realize you're the mud.
You're the mud. Yeah.
So This is me. Well, anyway, 5 days in, we've only done product training. And the next day we're going out in the field and I'm told to just go sell. So I'm thrown on Sydney Road in Melbourne, Australia. And I didn't even know what to say.
How's the acne? Do you still have the acne at this time, or has that been dealt with?
It's all there. It's all there. Really bad acne. I still had braces at that time as well. Obviously, I didn't have to wear my glasses at all times, only when I was reading. So I definitely left those at home. But that's me. That's where I was. So I am uncomfortable about the fact that people judge me before they even speak to me, and I don't know what I'm going to say. But then I say, all right, I'm just going to walk in. So I take a deep breath and I walk in. And luckily, actually, I was politely told to leave. Then I was less politely told to leave. Then I was sworn at. But my personal favorite was people saying, why don't you just go get a real job? I mean, this was the only job I could get, right? So door after door, this just kept happening. I was rejected. I was sworn at until the 93rd door where I made my first sale.
Was that really the 93rd door? 93rd door.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I didn't exactly hit it rich. Like, I made $70, which made me ecstatic until I realized I got to do this again tomorrow and the next day and the next. I mean, that took me all day. But I think what happens is a lot of people then move to one of two mindsets. We either run away or we decide, and I think the entrepreneurial world now has that, let's just grind it out. We'll just hustle and it'll all be okay. Neither of those were going to work for me. I mean, I wasn't willing to have another day like this, but I also wouldn't quit, which is what 18 of the 20 people in my training group did.
Yeah.
What I did, though, is I made a decision that sales had to be a system, because if it wasn't a system, my year was going to be terrible. And what I did is I went to work trying to learn the system, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to pick up a Brian Tracy or a Zig Ziglar book. I mean, it would have taken me a year to read that. But I discovered if I typed in the sales system in YouTube, all these videos came up. And then what I did is every day I'd spend 8 hours out in the field and then 8 hours at home practicing the next element of the sales process. And I just did that every day. Weekends, I'd spend 16 hours practicing. And I'm sure to people, it doesn't sound like that, like a lot of fun. It wasn't. It was horrible. But what happened is I got better and better. I mean, soon it was 75 doors and then 48 and then 21 and then 19 and then 8. And then I got it down to an average of making a sale on every third door.
Wow.
Well, what actually happened
in the same business, in the same work that you were doing?
Yeah, the same job, exact same.
The same job, the same product, the same person, and you got it down from 93 to 3, just based on sales training that you were popping from the internet.
That's exactly. I mean, and to say that absolutely clearly for everybody, these weren't videos I was paying for. I didn't buy $1,000, $2,000 training course. I was watching free videos that are put out on YouTube, like from all the mentors and everybody does. I mean, that's why I put so much content out on YouTube now, because YouTube helped me so much, but that was it. Free content that I learned. And of course, I was very disciplined in understanding what the overall structure would be and then focusing on each one of the elements. But literally within that period, 6 weeks in, my manager called me into his office, and I thought I was in trouble. I thought I did something wrong. He had this puzzled look on his face because, I mean, I was the quiet guy that handed my paperwork in downstairs, then went upstairs, and all these boisterous salespeople would talk about how tough the world of sales and door-to-door was. Well, he said, Matt, we just printed out the national sales results, and it turns out you're the number one salesperson in the company. I mean, this was a company that had thousands of salespeople. And I mean, I'd gone from terrified to sell, having no business being in sales, to being the number one in the business, and then you think that was an achievement. Well, then they promoted me because they were like, oh, if you can sell, you can manage. That's not true. I know some people that are amazing at what they do and terrible managers. And
yeah, that's not true at all.
Oh, in sales, everyone thinks because you can sell, you can manage. It's not true. Sometimes the average salespeople make better managers. But the thing is that they gave me a team of 20 people, and all 20 people quit within like literally 24 hours. So they were
mud. They were mud against the wall.
Well, except the wall wasn't that sticky. I was a terrible manager, right? I was horrible at the job because I had no idea what I was doing. So I went back to YouTube and I learned to manage. And anyway, fast forward, a year, I was promoted about 7 times in that space because I got, what I realized is that if I keep focusing on the system and keeping people, focused on the system, I could become very successful at getting their success rate up. And I became well known for helping a lot of introverts outperform everybody in the company. And then about a year in, I made the decision I was going to start my own business. And that was, telecommunications at that time was all I knew. Well, 3 years in, that was the largest brokership for B2B cell phones in the company. Fast forward just shy of a decade, I'd been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar businesses.
That's incredible, Matthew. That's incredible. So you basically built yourself your own YouTube MBA program in a matter of months, working in the evenings and on the weekends just to develop the skills, the sales skills. You built yourself an overarching system and then learned the methodologies within that system. And then you starting your own businesses based on the principles that you were discovering. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, absolutely. I mean, so absolutely. When I was talking about sales, that was exactly it. I learned a system watching YouTube videos. I perfected the system. And then I learned a new system when I was asked to manage on how to manage. I think that's the difference. I think a lot of people these days, because let's face it, life really isn't that tough. Like if we go back 200 years, having a tough life meant starvation and death. Right now, you're still probably going to have a roof over your head. You're probably still going to have electricity. You probably still have Wi-Fi and internet and cell phones. And it's not as hard as it used to be. And I think the reason why, I was willing to do that extra work is because the whole world never worked for me, right? I couldn't read. I had to find and my mother found me, these glasses that made it different and made me find a success. But before I could read, I could never read the books that we had in English class. So I would stimulate arguments in class about what the book was about and take good notes because that was the only way I could find out what the book was about. Going into, an exam or something like that. So I was always looking for ways that were outside the scope of the way most people learn. And I applied that to sales, absolutely. I applied finding a system that worked for me when it came to, managing, and then all the other systems that are required for small business. And then when I moved to the US, I didn't know anybody. So I applied that method, a systems methodology to learning how to network. And, I went from not knowing anyone to literally I was invited to events as one of the most connected people in the city of Austin within a period of 12 months. And now globally, I'm, one of the most globally connected people in the sales, marketing, small business world. And all of that came from a systems approach to everything that I do.
You founded the Small Business Festival, right? So you founded a whole networking thing that now thousands of people, is it still going, the Small Business Festival?
Absolutely.
Probably
well, it didn't
challenged by COVID, right?
Not so much during COVID this year. So we, next year we plan on making it virtual if we're still suffering from the COVID environment. But the thing, it was terrific. We launched it in the first year, and like me and a couple of the founders that I put together, we literally had this idea and we took it from in 90 days from no company name, no website, nobody knows about it, to talking to the first few people going, that's not going to work. You've got 90 days, to launching it, to Twitter listing it as one of the profiles to follow for National Small Business Week, just below the SBA, right above Google for small business, by the way. Inc. listing it as the number 3 conference in America for small business. We had over 100 speakers and 5,000 people attend in Austin. We got sponsorship from Facebook, from GoDaddy, from the city of Austin, from, like, I could give you a Rolodex of names.
That's incredible.
Fast forward 3 years, we had over 100 free events happening across the country.
Oh my gosh, dude. That's amazing. And have you maintained the 5 smaller businesses that you started in your 20s? Are those things still going as well?
Some of them are still going. I mean, but some of them have been sold. So, you know, obviously my major skill set is really around starting, and then I kind of get bored. Yeah. So for me, what I look at is I'm always looking at exit plans. One of them was it was a marketplace that was really, really good for a period of time. And then after a period of time, the market had become saturated. This was when the 2008 recession hit and everyone was looking to go back into education. We built an education facility specifically designed to helping tradespeople cope during that period of time. And we were actually lucky enough that there was government funding at that time that we were able to tap into. So because of that, it created this spike. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people really need to realize about business is, and you know, the business that I'm now in, I will be doing until I'm old and gray. But if there are certain businesses, and this was actually a really important lesson that I learned, was my first business, when I got it to a certain point of success, I won an award called the Young Achiever Award. And that was because of the success of creating this organization. And I remember going home, and by what a lot of people would have said, I was really incredibly successful. I made great money. I had that 270-degree view of the city in that perfect penthouse apartment. I had the cars downstairs. I had all of it, except for the fact I was miserable. And the reason why I think that this is important for people to realize is when I first started, I was starting my business for the wrong reasons. I remember back from really young age when I said to people, I want to be, and I think I said that I wanted to be a lawyer at that time. Actually, no, I think I said I wanted to be a doctor to my primary school, teachers. And my parents got called into the school because they thought that it was important that I was given realistic expectations given my disabilities. I mean, wow. I would have been 6 or 7. Like, who cares if I want to be if I want to be an astronaut, tell me I can be an astronaut, right? No, I needed to have realistic expectations. Because of those things, as I continued to get more and more successful, it was all about proving to everybody else that I was a person of substance. Yep. And because of that, when I remember going home with that award and looking around, and I was like, if this is what success looks like, I don't want it. So for me, one of the things that I will tell people, because I know that, saying I created a whole bunch of really successful businesses, sounds great, but I want people to know that was me developing and learning, okay, this business doesn't make me happy. This business doesn't make me happy. And because of that, as I went through different businesses, and some of them I still maintain, but as I went through them, you have to say, okay, this one doesn't make me happy. Do I need to continue to run it? Do I sell it? Do I put somebody in charge of it and just trust that they'll manage it correctly? Yeah. You have to follow, because the thing that I will say is you can really, these days, especially in our globally connected world, you can create rapid growth out of anything. But there is nothing worse than a rapid growth business with customers you can't stand, the business you don't like. And what I realized for me is that making money, of course, it's important. I mean, you can never say it's not important, right? People, when you say, don't worry about money, it's easy for somebody that has money to say that, right? But the thing is that when you start to make money, all of a sudden you start to realize that if the other parts of your life aren't happy, and if what you do for a large amount of your life doesn't fulfill you, it's a problem. So what happened is, as I went through, the last business was in education, and I jumped on that because it was a great opportunity because of the world of education, the funding that was coming into it, and all of the things that were going together at that specific time. And I realized something. I realized that when I got to help small business owners, I felt fulfilled. The problem was that I didn't get as fulfilled as I liked, because as soon as the business became successful, I had no time to spend any time with the small business owners because we had teachers, and then I was managing the sales team. So when I moved here, I was looking for a way that I could serve small business owners, because I think there's something heroic about a small business owner that has enough belief in themselves to go out and start something of their own. But I know that there are things that they don't know outside their functional skill that I happen to know that stop them from being successful. So I kind of went on this mission of how can I continually help that group, that small business owner, and more specifically, the service provider that's introverted, because they don't want to do any bulldog techniques or hard closes. They have to work with these people later. So they need to make sure they're selling in an authentic and congruent way. But I wanted them to create a great income that revolved around them, their family, and their life. So what I really did is I started, and this was in a lot of ways, really trying to figure out who I wanted to be and who I wanted to serve. And for those people that don't feel like they get to wake up every day and serve the people that they want, if they've got a successful business, they need to be looking for an exit strategy to do that. Because just like, the people that say, oh, I don't need a family. The people that have families will go, sure, you don't need a family. You don't know what you're missing out on. Well, I will tell you the same thing for business. If you've got a business that makes you phenomenal money, but it doesn't internally keep you happy, then you need to keep going. You need to either mold that business that you have into something that you love, or you need to go and start another business that will allow you to succeed. I promise you, if you attach passion to what you do, you'll always make more money.
Matthew, that's such good stuff. There's so much stuff there. Let's hit on a couple of things. One is that lack of fulfillment. So you're successful, you're building wealth, you're building these companies, but it's not satisfying you. We see that in our culture and around us all the time. People just focus solely on the development of their thing and making money and getting to some numeric number or to some place of status or achievement or whatever. And they get there and they realize this wasn't what I thought. This isn't satisfying. So one of the things that you're suggesting is to find a vocation, find a work, find a different find an exit strategy, do something else that's going to be more fulfilling. Was there anything else that you did internally? Any kind of new habits that you practice, any kind of work that you did to help yourself be more content, satisfied, thriving in who you are, in who you're becoming, in what you're doing, that kind of transferred over to the next businesses or to the new way that you were going to enter into the next endeavor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what happens is when we're not connected to what we know we should be doing, we start to develop anxiety. Right. So, and I think the body's like you feeling anxiety is like your soul yelling at you that what you're doing is not aligned with what you should be doing on this earth. Yeah, so good. For me, I found myself that anytime, and actually, let me give you an example. So one of the things that I set all my clients to do all the time is I get them to write 3 business goals, 3 personal goals, 1 selfish to themselves, because that's the one that drives them. Right. But it's really a means to an end. The reason why it's a means to an end is high achievers are great at writing their goals down. But the second question that I ask is explain each one of those goals in 250 words or less, including why it's important to you. And the thing that I find is people inherit their goals from their mother, their father, their drunk roommate they had in college. They hear these things, they're like, that's what I want. They charge after it, but they don't think it through. So then we have this culture of people that don't have a fire in their belly to go after their goals because they don't really want them. Or they do what I did, which I think is even sometimes worse. They hit that goal and they go, why did I bother? Why did I sacrifice so much to get there? So, I mean, there's an exercise. I have a podcast called The Better Business Coach. And in episode 17, which is called Forget About Goals, Why is the Key to Success? What I actually do is I run you through that exercise and I show you how to get your goals in alignment and how to tap in to your why, your passion, and your mission. But for a lot of those people that are listening, they're like, all right, Matt, follow your dream, follow your passion. It's fine for you, but I've got this career and this job, right? And I'm I can't just quit my job. The thing that I will tell people is more often than not, the business that they got into or the career that they've chosen was a choice because they could have chosen anything, yet they chose it. And I'll give you an example. I worked with this guy called Nick Jensen, And he was an insurance salesperson. If you think about the person that you don't want to meet when you're networking, it's somebody that says they sell insurance, right? Like literally his eye, like he said, I would tell somebody I'm in insurance and their eyes, I could see them screaming. They're like, how do I get away from this person? So they'd politely listen to him for 3 minutes and they'd find an excuse to go to the bathroom, the bar, and leave the event, whatever they had to do to get away. So he's like, what do I do? How do I explain what I do in a way that interests people where I don't really feel like he's an introvert, where I don't feel so uncomfortable? And what I said is, I said, all right, well, let me ask you a question. We need to bring you back to passion and mission, right? So many people lose that because we think we've got to focus on the practical. And that's a lie, right? You can make more money doing what you're passionate about, because think about how passionate I am about what I do right now. Think of the tonality in my voice, the energy that I have. How does anyone compete with someone like me, like for like, if you're not as passionate as I am, right? You just can't. And that doesn't matter if you're teaching typewriter maintenance or flossing. As long as you're passionate about it, no one else will do it better. So for Nick, right. I said, let's tap into this passion. Help me understand, if you could choose to work with anyone, well, why did you get into insurance in the first place? And he's like, well, I really wanted to help people. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. What about specific types of people? Somebody that earns 50,000 versus somebody that earns 250. He's like, well, obviously the 250 one, because I'd make more money. I'm like, okay, well, it's not obvious, because some people just like to help the people that are really struggling. So clearly it's a financial driver. We're going in the wrong part, because I can't really say to somebody, oh, I really want you as a client because I really want to buy a Bentley next week, right? People aren't going to respond to that. So let's think about it differently. What about a person that both people started off poor? One of them hustled really hard to get the right grades, to get into Harvard, to get the perfect job. Now they're making about $250 a year in that C-level executive job they always dreamed of, versus somebody that started off poor, eventually started up their own business, hired a bunch of people to run that business, and now they earn about $250 in their business. Which one of those would you prefer to help? He said, well, obviously the small business owner. I'm like, whoa, why the small business owner? What, the guy from Harvard didn't try hard? He said, well, I just feel like they deserve it more. I'm like, okay, explain that to me. Well, it turns out he had a grandfather that owned a farm, and he bought the farm and he built this farm up, and he had all these staff working for them that he looked after incredibly well. Then his grandfather got sick and he had to sell the farm because he couldn't run it day to day anymore. He ended up moving into this really small apartment. He said, I just watched my grandfather literally sit on the couch watching TV and die for the last 10 years of his life. He said, I don't want people to do that, like have that kind of life. And I said, but Nick, you sell life insurance. Like, what does that do? He didn't die. He said, well, I've discovered these policies. You can put money in to the policy, get a huge rate of return. You can flip that into property. I was blown away with how much he knew. And I said, okay, let's stop this for a second. What if you could work every day to only help the small business owner that has hustled every day to succeed in their own business, not get to a terrible retirement like your grandfather did? Would that make you happy? He's like, well, absolutely. I said, forget about calling yourself an insurance agent then. Let's call you instead the hustle lifeguard. When you go to networking events and online, when people ask, what's that? Talk about your passion and mission for helping the small business hustler, and then explain the story of your grandfather or one of your clients. Now, he gets more people come to him that want to work with him than ever before, even though he's excluding a whole bunch of people because he's the only logical choice. And these people don't see him as an insurance salesperson. They see him as somebody that truly cares and wants to help. So if you align passion with what you do, it's incredibly possible. And most of you don't need to change a thing. You just have to. For me, I changed a lot because I didn't realize how to connect passion, mission with what I was doing so long ago.
And you're a genius guide, Matthew. You're a guide in getting people to that spot. And that podcast that you referred to is on the homepage of your website, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And it's called Forget Your Goals, Focus on Why. And it walks people down the path that you just gave the example of walking that hustle insurance guy, right?
Well, the why focus is, so if you go to betterbusinesscoachpodcast.com, it will be the first thing that shows up there. Okay. And the podcast is called Forget About Goals, Why is the Key to Success. Now, that will really help you get an understanding of where your passions and whys lie and what your goals really should be, and stop you from getting lost in all of these shiny objects that you really don't care about, right? If you're earning $30,000 right now, I promise you, you don't want to earn $1 million. You don't even really know how to spend $1 million. 100,000, that's a more realistic goal. And you might find that you can make a great amount of money doing what you truly love at 100,000. My bet is you'll then find a way to make $1 million doing what you actually love in an easier way than you would have attempting to try and get to this $1 million that you didn't really want back then. The second thing is for those people that have their own business or their own career, getting to the concept of what Nick came up with, the hustle lifeguard, or in my case, I call myself the rapid growth guy, because in truth, for me, I'm a small business coach. I'm a branding expert. I'm a social media strategist. I teach introverts how to succeed in networking and sales. I'm a master in neuro-linguistic programming, which is the psychology of thought. I mean, all of that is too convoluted. I mean, in truth, nobody cares. They don't care how hard it was for me to learn these things, how long it took me to learn it. When I say I'm the rapid growth guy, that simplicity gets me heard in a crowded marketplace. When I say I work exclusively with introverted service providers, that makes it crystal clear to that group, my gosh, I need to work with this person. Now, for those people that want to come up with their own version of their unified message, that'll excite and inspire people to want to know more and discover their niche of willing to buy clients, again, you don't need to hire me for that, right? Remember, I put a ton of free content out on YouTube and all those sorts of things, but there's actually a link. If you go to matthewpollard.com/growth, you can download a 5-step template, which you'll be able to work through to really create that for yourself. And I can tell you, actually, I did an event before we all got in lockdown for the National Freelance Conference. There were like 200 people in the room. And I said at the end of it, put your hand up if you now believe you've got an exciting message that will inspire people to want to know more in networking and, virtually through virtual selling, virtual networking, social media, and you've discovered your niche of willing to buy clients. 97% of the room put their hands up, which sounds great until I said, now do me a favor, just keep your hands up if this is the most time you spent on marketing since you started your business. And 85% of the room kept their hands up. So the key is that this absolutely works if you spend the time doing it. And what I would recommend to everyone listening, if you've got a friend that is listening to this podcast or would benefit from listening to this show, get them to listen to this episode and then do it with them. Do the 5-step template for them on them and get them to do it on you, and do it with somebody that's not from your industry, because otherwise you'll get caught up in industry jargon and you won't get it right. If you do that 2 hours later, if you've both done your goals going in, you'll have a substantially different view of your business or your career.
That's really smart, Matthew. And I encourage people to do that very thing. Listen to this with their friend. Download what you're talking about at matthewpollard.com/growth. Because here's the deal. We have a difficult time often kind of evaluating ourselves. And we need someone else, whether it's a friend, a spouse, a significant other, to give us feedback, because we're so in the weeds with our own words, with our own experience, with our own insecurities. Sometimes we need someone else to reflect back and say, yeah, but you're selling yourself a little bit short. Like, dig into that, believe that. You're giving yourself this and you're really up here, and going through that exercise with someone else, I think would be very profitable.
One thing you'll find as well, just to add to that, is everybody listening has amazing things about themselves that they take for granted. I mean, it could be their upbringing. Like my struggle with reading has given me a way of looking at the world and systems that nobody else has. It gives me a way of not assuming that anything is impossible for me, that no one else has. My fact that I started in door-to-door sales when I shouldn't have been allows me to help introverts like no one else can. But the fact that I then started up my own businesses and learned marketing, and it allows me to help people in both sales and marketing. Both of those silos generally don't talk to each other. And the fact that I now moved all of that online, where most online people think offline salespeople are stupid, and most salespeople offline think that most online salespeople are too scared to pick up the phone. Bringing all of that together was what allowed me to become the rapid growth guy. So the thing that I will tell you is everyone's natural upbringing, their natural abilities, a lot of those things they don't recognize. And what happens is we get so focused on our functional skill, the thing we do day to day. And that generally isn't what makes us different. It's what makes us the same. So by working with somebody external, they'll say, yeah, no, I totally understand that you're good at that stuff, but I don't think you're aware about this, and this quality that makes you phenomenal. And that is the thing that's going to get you clients. Now, everyone may not love it. For instance, the fact that I'm so focused on introverts, and the fact that I might say things from time to time, like extroverts have their own burdens to bear, like they're not the greatest listeners sometimes, they don't have great empathy, right? That may mean that the extroverts will hear me and go, I'm not going to work with that guy. He's clearly, all in it for the introverts. Now, this isn't extrovert bashing. I mean, the fact is that extroverts will go out and learn how to do it, how to be better, more empathetic. They'll go out and learn active listening. And if not, HR will go and send their staff member to one of those trainings. The difference is, and the reason why I support introverts so much, is because we believe that we have this gift of gab barrier, and so does our managers. So because of that, they go, oh, we'll just accept subpar performance from him because that's the best we're going to get. And that is what I'm not okay with. So I'm all about helping the introverts. Now, the problem is that means that I'm literally saying to half the world, I'm not for you, I can't help you. But in truth, that makes one half of the world go, oh my gosh, I need to work with this person. And
this is my guy.
Absolutely. But secondly, it means that my books, everything that I put out, means that I can talk about those people, or us, if you like, in a much more intelligent way. I'll talk about the unique fears that we face, right? I literally talk about it because I'm not trying to pander to the extroverts that are also reading my books, even though a lot of extroverts do. I'm reading and I'm literally explaining from an introvert psyche. And I can't do that if I pander to everyone.
Yeah. Focusing is important, but it's also coming out of your own passions, coming out of your own story, and not being afraid to be clear about that and go after the people that you relate to, that you have a passion for, is part of your success. It's part of what's helping you to grow rapidly in your young, business endeavors.
Well, I can tell you though that so this book, The Introverted Edge, the first one, I almost didn't write it, and I never wanted to write it. It was only somebody external that pushed me to write it that caused it to happen. And this is what I mean. You have to trust people that are outside because you're stuck in your own mess. You've got too much going on. You know your stuff too well. And you know all your barriers too well, right? For me, I can't spell. Therefore, I should not be able to write a book, right? Clearly, everyone knows that. If you can't spell, you can't write a book. But there are other ways to write a book that I discovered. And it only happened what happened is when I came to the US, I made the decision that I was tired. I remember watching your friends, really close friends across the road, parents, open up a business, and they were so happy about it. And then about a year later, they were less happy about it. And then a little bit longer later, they weren't getting along so well. And then I only got to see my friend half as often, right? Because they got divorced. And I mean, small business owners take so much risk and they deserve so much help. And for me, I knew I could do something about that. And I wanted to serve that group of people. So when I came to the US, I made the decision that I was going to coach people, and I was going to create an online program, and I was going to speak from stage to get the word out that, that small business owners can be successful. And what happened was about 2/3 of the presentation, as I said, people are looking at me and projecting extroversion upon me. So I would then tell my own introverted story. So I'd talk about differentiation, niche marketing. And then before I got into sales systemization, I'd talk about, my story. And I'd have all these introverts come up afterwards and say, Matt, I never knew I could sell as an introvert. This has been such a wonderful presentation for me because I always thought that my business was always going to be a struggle. And now I know that that's not true. So I started telling every sales influencer I knew, somebody had to write a book on introverted selling. And I kept telling them to write it because I wasn't a writer. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I've written blog posts, but if anyone's written one of my blog posts, if you haven't, go check them out. Basically, I yell at you for 1,500 words because writing's so difficult for me, right? But who wants to be yelled at for 50,000 words when you're learning how to sell, right? So for me, I just knew it wasn't a possibility. But no one would write it. And everyone said to me, no one's going to buy a book on introverted selling. And I said, what are you talking about? I mean, there are thousands of books written for extroverts or are perceived to be written for extroverts. There's no book written for us as introverts to learn how to sell. I said, people are going to want this book. But no one agreed with me. So what happened is I ended up working with a ghostwriter who was a client of mine, and he made $27,000 in 2013, $12,000 by October of 2014 when we agreed to work together. 2 weeks later, he made $40,000. 6 weeks later, he made $80,000. The end of the year, he made $120,000. The following year, he made just shy of $300,000. Okay, so we crafted his message, he understood his niche, and he created the sales system. But the sales system is what changed I mean, he was trying to sell via email because he didn't want to pick up the phone, but he was selling services that were like $50,000. You're never going to be like, how are you ever going to get somebody to agree to work with you without even getting to meet you and finding out that you're a real person, right? So I transformed the way he sold, and he said, Matt, you've got to put what you teach into a book. And I explained, and he knew all my issues anyway. And he said, well, let's work together. We'll write the book.
Yeah.
So we worked together on the book. And actually, even in one of the later chapters, we used the quote from The Wizard of Oz, paid no attention to the man behind the curtain. And then he comes out from behind the curtain and shares his own real story of introverted sales transformation. But that book, I mean, it sold 25,000 copies in the first year. HubSpot listed it as one of the most highly rated sales books of all time. And then, Book Authority listed it as the #2 introvert book of all time. So it really just took off. And I mean, the new book, The Introvert's Edge to Networking, which, doesn't come off, it comes out on the 19th of January. So not far away now. It's just created this interest in the whole series of books. But if it wasn't for somebody else external to me saying, Matt, you have to do it. Here are your skill sets. And it's not something somebody else can do. You have to do it. I would never have written this book.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And the next big goal you have, you just got to go develop an introvert in that space, and then they'll help you break through whatever that space is. If it's book writing, or if it's, you already have the podcast, maybe you want to make a movie, and you have to find a director and help him level up, and then he'll make your movie for you.
That's a great idea. I'll get on that.
Yeah. Matthew, so you have so much energy, you have so much passion for what you're doing, you serve people, you're clearly motivated by serving people and helping them reach their potential and do their dream and serve the people that they're supposed to serve. How do you keep yourself healthy? What are some of the habits that you use on a daily basis now that you're not as, your wife is in place, helping you not just burn out like crazy? What are some of the things that you do, daily routine or weekly routine, that help you stay healthy, energized, and focused?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I have to run. I find that if I don't go for a run at least 3-4 times a week, and I notice the difference even on the days that I don't run. But if I don't go for a run, I find that built up, especially with the COVID environment, we've all been dealing with, that when I don't, I have so much built up energy that I almost feel like I want to explode. So when I go for a run, it takes that anxiety energy and it gives me this really great clarity. It also lets me almost mentally file all the things that I feel like I need to do. I'm a big list writer, and what I find, and I think this is really important for especially, well, really everyone, but most, for small businesses, I know it definitely works. I'm a list writer. Like I have a list of all the things that I need to achieve, like in today. And, every day I will throw this piece of paper away and rewrite what I haven't done, because sometimes new priorities will come in. And gosh, occasionally there's a priority that comes in today that you absolutely need to do today. But more often than not, if it shows a break in a system and you need to fix that system so that never happens again, right? Yeah. But what happens is most people let their email address dictate what they do. And then they get to the end of the day and they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't actually done anything I was setting out to do. So they work longer hours than they need to. So for me, by doing lists, I get myself to really focus on just working the hours that I need to. I go for a morning run, or at least go to the gym in the morning. I then will do my day's worth of activities. And then, I'm very much, my wife knows this. If I have a day of sales calls or something like that, I need to have my downtime, whether it's, staying, usually I'll retreat to a dark room, put on a hoodie and watch a TV show. Like after this, I am definitely doing that. I will go to a dark room, put on a hoodie and just have this period of time. And I think, a lot of people listening that don't know the difference between introvert and extrovert. It's not that we can't do a podcast interview like this. It's not that we can't speak from stage. It's not that we can't sell. It's not that we can't network. As a matter of fact, I believe that we can do all of those things in a lot of ways better than extroverts. The difference is that afterwards, like for me, I need to go and do something more introverted to recharge my batteries. Yeah. So, and that is the biggest thing for me. It's knowing how to recharge. So yes, I exercise in the morning. Yes, I will have that downtime to unwind. And I think that's important, especially when you work from home, that you mentally unwind before you go back to your family, because otherwise you will not be in the right mental state to handle things, perhaps you could consider them more trivial, but they're actually much more important, right? But when you're working in your business, it's so easy to see them as small things. So, for me, I think mental health is by far, you have to work out how do you control your mental health. If you can control your mental health, your body health is actually a lot easier, and becomes easier if you're not weighed down mentally. The thing that I will say is my wife is very, very focused on making sure we always eat healthy, no preservatives, natural foods. And, the things that I may have snacked on before I met her that I really enjoyed generally don't end up in the house that often. And occasionally, I get a treat, but I don't actually miss that stuff.
Yeah. That's nice to have her invested like that and helping you in that, because it's all connected. That's one of the things we talk about at Spirit Farm, is that everything's connected. Body, mind, heart, and soul. It's all connected, and we are at our healthiest when those things are integrated and we're paying attention to them. And so many people will just focus and obsess about the business, and they mentally burn out. They let their bodies go. They're not connected spiritually, and they suffer as a result. So I'm totally introverted too. Not that I can't speak on stages, not that I can't do this, not that I can't hang out in groups. But when that time is over, I retreat. I go, and it's where you recharge. My wife recharges going out with the girls. I recharge with the hoodie in a dark room, watching a show or reading a book. And it's just the way, or climbing a mountain or something like that. It's just knowing yourself and making sure that you are getting that time to stay connected, to stay integrated as a whole person.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, what's interesting is, and I never like to project introversion on people, but the way you handle this whole interview, you've got a major strength in active listening. You're very empathetic in the way that you talk about things. You put your audience first rather than there's very little I in a lot of your interviews. It's more about what your audience, those are all introverted characteristics, right? The fact that you explained what was going to happen before the interview, as opposed to just saying, oh, we're just going to wing it. And, so I've been interviewed by extroverts, been interviewed by introverts, and, you can really tell the difference and who's trying to run the lead in the interview. But, there's a lot of things that will shift as you go through that. But, I think that a lot of people listening, be empowered by the fact there are two introverts that have seemed to manage to have a conversation for a whole hour that really just met. And so, again, it doesn't mean that you can't do this. And one of the other things that I will point out is, a lot of people ask me how I was able to become so successful online and how I was able to become so successful and create businesses so successfully. And I don't work as hard as a lot of other people. A lot of people put out daily podcasts. A lot of people blog every day. A lot of people put up, I never wanted to be the guy on social media taking a photo of my donut because I had nothing other than that to say. It's not me. Here's the thing. If you're not the clearest, you have to be the loudest. So if you don't have a great message, if you've got that vanilla message, just like everyone else, you have to hustle harder than them to rise to the top. But instead, if you just, and listen to me here, if you just spend a little bit of time, and it doesn't take anywhere near as much time as you think, creating a great message, understanding your niche, creating powerful stories that you can share, like I did with Nick in my own personal journey, you really don't have to work as hard as everyone else because your message is crystal clear to the people you mean to serve. When that happens, all of a sudden, especially if it's aligned with your passion and mission, everything's in alignment. You don't have to work as hard as everyone else to get to where you're going. And yes, systems like sales systems are hugely important. Networking systems, like I discuss in my second book, hugely important. But when you get to that, it's a lot easier to then say, oh, I spend time centering myself in the morning. I do exercise, in early morning. And then, I always have my chill out time, because when everything's in alignment, it really isn't as hard as you think. But it does require you to do what a lot of people struggle with. Absolutely stop, reassess, spend a couple of days, and really it's only a couple of days in planning, and then reset their life on a much more positive note.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So your book, The Introverted Edge, How the Quiet and Shy Can Outsell Anyone, is available now. It's everywhere. It's Amazon. It's all the places. People can grab that now. And your new book is about to launch. It's about to release. And that is The Introverted Edge to Networking?
Absolutely correct. And what, for those people that are listening, my publisher hates me when I say this. You don't need to buy my book. If you go to the introvertededge.com, you can actually download the first chapter of the first book. Pretty much, well, it's available now, but that'll help you get over your hurdles around believing you can sell as an introvert. And then I actually outline the full 7-step process to selling as an introvert. So if you do nothing more than grab what you currently say and put it under those headings, you'll realize that some things are out of order. You'll realize some things don't fit. Stop saying that to clients. You shouldn't be talking about those things. Then you'll realize there are some gaps. And if you do nothing more than put it in order, fill in those gaps, you'll double your sales in the next 60 days. And then, yes, you can go to the introvertsedge.com/networking. And there, I, again, will get you over the hurdle of believing you can network and outline the full system for networking there for you as well.
Yeah. And probably even if someone doesn't think that they're an introvert, that they're more on the extroverted side, that the principles are sound and are relevant, and they can check out everything that you do offer in terms of your small business coaching at MatthewPollard.com, right?
Absolutely, that's correct. I get a ton of extroverts going, this book's just as good for extroverts as it is for introverts. I'm like, guys, girls, you've got enough books for you. This book's for introverts. That's why all the analogies I use. And there are things like, the reason why it's been endorsed by Harvard, Princeton, Neil Patel, Marshall Goldsmith is because this is a sales system without bulldog techniques, no hard closes. It's just a system where you follow the bouncing ball and it'll get you to an easy outcome. And if you've got the rest of the stuff done right, especially the messaging and the niching, then a lot of that heavy lifting is already removed. But even without that, if you work in a sales job or you've got a career and you need to network, even without that, you'll still find you don't need to do those tactics that just make us feel like we want to vomit. You really can just have a nice, simple process that is less transactional and where you feel a little bit more connected to who you really are.
Matthew, I have other questions, bullet points, things I wanted to address and discuss. We'll have to do this again down the road because you are content rich and you have all kinds of helpful things to say. So let's wrap up this interview here and let's do this again in the future, maybe for your third book or maybe when there's another exciting thing that you want to talk about and serve people. We appreciate you. You've added a ton of value and it's great to get to know you.
It was my pleasure, and don't get me stressed out about a third book right now. Like every time I write a book, I literally have to listen to it text to speech with a robot voice. It's horrific, but it's rewarding to see the impact that it has on people. But I would love to come back. Thank you for having me on, and it's been a pleasure to share with you today.
Thanks, Matthew.